this session, we look at Head of the Families interface in more detail. In our last session on Head of the Family, we looked at doing the initial run over families, and we generated some preview icons, deleted materials, and prefixed file names. It's now worth looking at the interface in a bit more detail. Up at the top here, we define information about our report levels, where our families exist. So this particular field tells us where our families live, and we have the option of searching subdirectories or subfolders in that location. We can then set various levels of detail. In most cases, having the first two options ticked will be sufficient, but you may want to know more information about nested families or nested family parameters. You may also want to report null value parameters, so parameters that currently don't have a value assigned. If you don't tick this, only parameters that have a value will be reported on. Up here we have the initialize button. This will delete our report, so scans from previous families, that information will be removed and we'll start fresh. We also have the option of opening the report, even though that happens automatically at the end of any of our process all operations. The cleanup button enables us to remove all of the backup RFA files, and that just is a nice easy way to clean up our folder after we've processed them. Now, the warnings option, this will extract warnings from the report file, so you can only click on this after you've in fact done a scan, but it reports on things like dimensions that aren't in fact associated with reference planes, or the fact that detail levels haven't been used within a family. So it's things that Head of the Family can't actually correct, but it can identify as an issue. The Disable Updates button gives you an easy way of turning off and on all of the update features. So to simply disable all of the updates and only do a report, we can click on Disable Updates. All of this becomes grayed, and we then only have the options of processing all, processing current, and changing the report level. So once we untick that, all of our items down here become available to us. So by and large, this is where we control updating to our families. We can in fact have multiple sets of control files, and that can be defined in this window. So if we have a number of rules that we want to apply to families, this enables us to have separate rules that we can go back to on a regular basis. Now, we've already seen and used generate 2D, 3D, material deletion, and prefix file names. Most of the other commands follow a fairly common approach. There's a used button, a transfer button, and an open or control file. So the used buttons will show us what has currently been used within our families. So this is derived from scanning our families, and each of these used buttons will grab a specific set of information. So for example, the update categories section, if we press on used, we will get the option of editing the data, which simply opens what we've done previously. The regenerate and edit data button will regenerate information, data from our scanned family file report. So all of that stuff that was done in our report or has been put into the report file, this will be accessed and compiled into a form that makes it easy to use. So we'll just click on that, At this point, an Excel file will be opened up, and this will relate to the particular used button that you've clicked on. We'll be presented with a number of relevant columns and a number of rows that give the information about the family files we've scanned. We could typically delete any rows that aren't of interest to us and modify other rows that are of interest to us. We'll look at this in more detail in later sessions. Once we've updated our used data, modified the file, we would typically then transfer that information across to our control file for that category. So we click on that. That brings up a window which enables us to overwrite the control file completely or append to that control file. So we can just keep appending more and more information as we go along to slowly build up a much lengthier control file. There are a few other aspects of the head of the family dialog worth investigating. The Imports button enables you to move any families that contain imported items, such as DWGs or 3DS files, to a separate folder. This effectively quarantines them. We also have an option here, which is the most used settings option. When this is enabled, clicking on either the used categories button or the used materials button will result in generating a list only of the most used settings. So for example, if there were 4 material definitions relating to default material in a number of families, it would actually work out which is the most commonly used set of values and report only on that. Having it unchecked would result in each of those default set of values appearing, and you would then need to make a decision about which one is correct as far as you're concerned. When working with parameters, we will need to have a shared parameter file defined. So whether that be an ANSYS file type or some other shared parameter file, you can specify that here by browsing for it or clicking on the ANSYS button, and if you want to view the file you can click on open, and that will then open that definition file for viewing. So just to recap on the interface, we set our scan level up here and we can initialize our report, we can clean up our files, we can check warning messages about our families. We have the option of disabling updates to simply scan families once again. And down here we can enable the various update options that we want to use. Typically I'd suggest doing one at a time, and process a current family first to see that you're getting the results you want, and finally click process all to process all of your family items. Next we will look at some of the updates possible, and the first one will be updating categories.